of women in sport.
Hello, and thank you for downloading the Amazon show on Wisp Sports. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 2, Episode 1. You can join in the conversation at any time by following us on social media. We hope you will, and share and like. That's at Wisp Sports. And you can also reach us directly by emailing info@wispsports.com. We would love to hear from you. My guest today is former golf coach Marci Kornegay, who achieved a life goal in 2016 when she hiked the Appalachian Trail from Maine to Georgia, and that was some 2,179.1 miles. The early miles she did alone, and then she met a group who were to become hiking buddies for months, and then friends ever since. Marci decided at short notice when she would start on the trail, giving herself only 2 weeks to prepare. But undeterred by the challenge she faced, she left on July 21st and finished on December 4th, just less than 5 months to complete one of the most well-trodden trails in North America. The highs and lows of long-distance hiking are inevitable, and Marci had her share too when she overcame injury and fire, only to find trail angels that would save her and restore her faith in humanity. Nowadays, Marci reflects on conquering the Appalachian Trail as only one journey, with many more hikes on her bucket list. Hi, Marci. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure.
Well, we got to know you, of course, for the work you do for We Coach. But I also discovered, I think it was last year, that you let out this just incidental news that you actually hiked the Appalachian Trail once. So I thought, that's a story we have to come back to.
I know. It's one of those stories that, you go out and you do it and you have this experience, and then it sort of slips up in conversation as if everybody in the world knows all about the Appalachian Trail, just like you do, that they live it and breathe it, like I do. And I got to say, I really have enjoyed meeting you over the course of the last year as well.
Well, thank you. So just to put this in context, it's now 4 years since you hiked, almost 4 years since you hiked it. But I want to go back to before you actually hiked it and what your hiking experience was and what motivated you. What was the incentive for you to actually take on one of the biggest trails in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, as far as my experience as a hiker, I guess probably one of my favorite activities is walking. And I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but, growing up, I was privileged enough to have two parents that would take us on adventures, and we would go camping and things like that. But, I really grew a love for the Appalachian Trail when I learned about it as a student at the University of Mississippi. And it was one of those things that I always had in the back of my mind, I'm going to go out and hike that trail one day. And of course, life, keeps delivering all these wonderful gifts, and you become employed. And, I was the women's golf coach for about 15 years at various institutions. And my last job was the head women's golf coach at the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida. And I was there for about 10 years, but always had the trail on my mind, and would go out, and if I had a free spring break or a long weekend, I would go out and try to get in as many miles as possible. But it was one of those things that, if you really have an appreciation for it, you find a way to learn more about it, and it sort of takes over and consumes, your thought process. And so every year, the Appalachian Trail developed sort of a hiker season. So it would start in spring for people that were going from Georgia to Maine. And I would get online and find a couple of people that were documenting their travels and think, okay, well, I'm going to follow them, sort of live vicariously through their travels. And maybe one day I'll have an opportunity to do it. And it was when I ended my coaching career at USF that I realized, I've got time to do something like that. And it really didn't dawn on me that, when you're in transition of a career and you're trying to figure out what you're going to be next and where you're going to go and who you're going to do it with, you really sort of take that minute to pause and figure out, okay, well, what is it that I really want to do? And I think it was on a Sunday, Chris, I opened up the Sunday paper, and at the time, and I don't even know if this is the case anymore, but the Parade magazine insert falls out of the magazine or of the newspaper, and it was all about the Appalachian Trail. And it was almost like my sign. There you go, Mars. This is your answer. You're going to go and you're going to take 4 to 6 months or so, and you're going to go and through hike the Appalachian Trail. And at that point, that's when I knew I had to get started. But that was so late. That was in July of 2016. Almost 4 months after hiker season started. And so to get prepared in such a short amount of time, that turned into a whole nother story.
Well, let's talk about that then. How long did it take you to prepare? Did you actually hike any part of the trail as part of your preparation? Or were you able to condition yourself to the conditions that you were expecting, just hiking anywhere?
No, I bought a couple of items online, and I decided to take a couple of road trips just around. I went down to Costa Rica and went into the rainforest just to get away, kind of clear my head after leaving my last job, and wait for Amazon to bestow all these wonderful hiking gear and gifts to me. And then when I returned home, got my sleeping bag together, I got my cook stove, my camp set, I purchased a new tent and just really re-upped my game. I re-upped my gear game. And really within 2 weeks of making that decision to go ahead and through hike, I was booking my flight up to Bangor, Maine, where I would start the trail July 21st of 2016. So really it was a 2-week period before, making sure that this is what I wanted to do, ordering the gear, having my last little hoorahs at home, and then hitting the trail.
But in terms of preparation, Marci, you're not always going to have someone by your side if you meet an unfriendly bear or a snake. Did that faze you at all?
It probably should have, but those are the types of things you just don't think about when you're like huffing and puffing, trying to make it up a mountain and trying to get back down the mountain to try to beat daylight or anything like that. I was chasing all of my white blazes, one after the other. I would look up every once in a while and just try to take it all in. Never really thought about what I would do in a circumstance like that. Thankfully, you brought up bears. I really didn't have that special bear encounter that I was kind of hoping to see. Of course, at a distance where it was nice and safe. But I never really questioned the navigation of it.
So you didn't feel threatened then at all by either humans or animals? You felt quite safe, did you, as a woman? You're a woman alone. It's not like you were in a small group or had any company.
Right. Yeah. No, I started off by myself. I went up to Maine and spent a couple of days by myself before I really started, getting out and meeting people. And it is a pretty social trail, and especially it's real seasonal. So as I was walking southbound, there were a lot of northbound hikers that were coming up through where I was to finish the trail and to finish their through hike. The trail is much less traveled heading southbound, particularly this late in the season. By this point, when I'm starting to try to reach out and utilize people as resources, we were getting late into July, mid part of August. School starts back, kids are off the trail, things like that. So it was one of those things that, you reach out, you lend a hand, you share a little bit about what is next coming up over the next couple of miles on the trail, if there's water or not, if there's bear activity, if there's snakes on the trail, if there's strange people to watch out for. So you really utilize, whatever those resources are. Thankfully, after I left Katahdin, you end up in the 100-mile wilderness, which is it is literally 100 miles of wilderness where you can't get in, can't get out. And I was able to meet some young hikers. I think they had just graduated from college. One was still in college. And me as this middle-aged woman, I was thinking, okay, well, I've got to latch myself onto these people or I will never get out of this wilderness and I will never make it to Georgia. And I kept thinking, okay, don't panic, Mars. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to end up in Georgia, 14 states away, just as planned. And you really lose sight of how important it is to just stay one step at a time. And so I met these kids and latched onto them, and we ended up being hiking buddies for the duration of the entire hike.
Oh, wow.
Almost 140 or so days out on trail. We probably spent a good 100 days together, and ultimately ended up meeting their families and came off trail in Virginia, and just taking advantage of the different hiking communities that are along the trail.
Yeah, that's awesome, the people that you meet along the way. Because I've read a few books about hiking the Appalachian Trail, not least of all Bill Bryson's book, A Walk in the Woods. Oh, and I know he didn't quite finish it, but he told wonderful stories of the trail. And I've read others too. And sometimes I've heard reports that actually the humans can be more of a threat than the animals. Sometimes you get some really weird people out on the trail.
Yeah, unfortunately. And without knowing the details, but, just this past year, there were a couple of deaths, untimely deaths on the trail by, people that went out that were not stable or not fit to be out on trail or be alone or be with a weapon, which you shouldn't have weapons out there anyway. Huge advocate for not hiking with weapons. But yeah, you do have to really look out the people that are on trail. One story in particular, I was walking through New Jersey, and it was one of those things. I was actually hiking at that point in time by myself and wanted to catch up to these new friends that I've met, and thinking that, okay, if I hike, the entire day and maybe a little bit into the night, I might meet them, in the next day or two, and came around and crossed over the New Jersey Turnpike or near about, and thought, okay, well, it's, I'm getting close to midnight. I'm exhausted. I'm going to take the next shelter that comes up. And it was right on the other side of the turnpike. And I walk in, and it's pitch black, no stars, no moon, and don't hear any noise. So I think, okay, well, I have this little camp area to myself. I'm just going to pitch my tent. Or actually, better yet, I'm going to jump into the shelter. I'll have the shelter to myself, and then that way I can get out first thing in the morning. And as soon as I turn the corner, walk into the shelter, and it is absolutely full of, I guess probably the best way to put it is trail dwellers. And that is, where a lot of the homeless population, especially around some of the more traveled roads, some of the shelters do fill up with people who are not out there to intend to use the trail as a source of, nature, but it is a place to go and safely spend the night. And so, yeah, so, you sit there and you're like, okay, do I stay? Do I trust these people? Because you really, as an AT hiker, you let your guard down, and it's real easy to do so because it's such a friendly trail and such a social trail and all other aspects. But that night, I had that feeling you get where you just know that's not where you need to be right there. And I just kept on walking. And because of that, I got to see one of the most beautiful sunrises the next morning, and reached a really high mileage day and got in over 35 miles that little segment. And, and so it turned into a whole nother adventure that I just wasn't willing to have that night with the trail dwellers.
Right. So typically, then I know it varies enormously, but typically how many miles would you have walked a day on a good day?
On a good day, after I'd get my trail legs, it took a good month or so to really develop trail legs, and I say that loosely. And it also depends on the type of terrain that we'd be going over. But for the most part, anywhere from 15 to 20 to 22 miles or so was a really good day. There were some areas in New Hampshire where you're going over the White Mountains where, if we could get to 10 miles, we were pretty happy with that. But the ultimate part is to make sure that you found a place at night where you felt comfortable staying. So there were a lot of parts where you pass signs and it would be beware of the bears and watch out for bear activity, high bear activity here and there. And so you want to keep, you want to avoid those areas. You don't want to wake up next to a bear.
No, you don't. But you said you obviously had a tent, and So, I mean, how much protection did that give you? I mean, if a bear came along, a curious bear in the middle of the night, how well could you sleep? I'm curious because that I think would give me a very sleepless night, not knowing what was outside the tent.
Yeah, you know what? I took a lot of Advil PM, and that helped quite a bit. I learned that I couldn't take melatonin, but that Advil PM was serving dual purpose right there. It was taking care of my aches and pains, and I could do a commercial for them right now, obviously. But you know, as far as your tent and your shelter goes, you trust it, and you trust that if you can't see in, they can't see in, or if you can't see out, they certainly can't see in. And it really is this false sense of security, but it's more mental than anything else. And if you can go to bed thinking, okay, I'm in my shelter, this is my reprieve from everything else out there, then you're probably going to have a pretty good night. And plus, you're just so dog tired, it doesn't really matter where you lay your head.
Well, there's that part to it too. Now, we've heard often about the trail angels that are there along the way. Tell us about those and your experiences with them.
Yeah, trail angels are it's part of the trail community, and people who want to be around the trail, the hikers, they want to give back. There's a lot of controversy I hear now about trail angels and how it sort of ruins the element of survival and getting through and the toughness factor. But I can tell you, I didn't meet a trail angel I didn't appreciate at that time. You know, they were so good at offering, whether it be, offering a place to stay on their floor, or in their house, bringing you in, cooking you meals, going out and meeting you actually on the trail and grilling up some burgers and, you know, offering you that really cold adult frosty beverage, or, you know, I really had actually probably one of my best trail angel experiences, hiking through, I believe I was around New Hampshire, and it all started when I was walking down this mountain called Franconia Ridge, and I was in a hurry because I believe it was a Friday night, and the post office in these small mountain villages or mountain towns, they close at 4:00 in the afternoon. So if you have a package waiting for you, you want to do everything that you can to get down, because the post offices in these small towns, they're either going to close at an early time and not be open on the weekend. And so I remember it was that Friday, and I was rushing down the mountain and not paying attention, and tripped and fell, and I fell on this really sharp rock, and it was one of those falls where you're laying in the dirt and you don't know if you're still there or not. You sort of have this out-of-body experience. You're like, is this tears or these blood? Can I move? And you start wiggling your toes and working your way up your body. And then you realize, okay, I'm okay. Nothing's broken, I don't think, although there's extremely numbness in my legs. And I look down and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's just blood everywhere. There's part of my leg, kind of smeared in the ground. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to make it down to the post office. I'm so worried about this post office box because it had food in it that I hadn't eaten in weeks. And about that time, I sort of roll over and I hear somebody coming up the trail, and it happened to be a retired nurse medic. And I mean, talking about being at the right place to make a fall like that, and then having a nurse,
Absolutely.
An Army nurse medic, taking a day trip with her little nurse medic fanny pack. She was going to go meet her son, and she caught me. She ran up and completely took care of me. Didn't pull out the tourniquet, but did have the little bandages and the glue, and sort of pieced my parts of my leg back together again and bandaged me up. And anyway, that story all to say that I made it back down 5 minutes before the post office was supposed to close. And then all of a sudden I meet this family who had just finished their day hike. They were cleaning up, about to jump in their car, head into town, and they were there to give me a ride into town. And I got my box, and I was able to, just sit there for a minute with my box, and I just welled up with tears and emotion. And I think that was the one time on trail where I really thought, oh my gosh, if you just start paying attention to the people that are around you and how willing people can be to help you, your entire life experience will completely open up and change. And I just sat there and just really stewed on that, because that was a little bit more than the business of a trail angel feeding me a hamburger or a hot dog. It was whether or not I was going to spend the night face down in the dirt or not.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I did read that you said it restored your faith in humanity doing this trail, for the people that you met and the help you got along the way.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to that one fall, my leg was probably, hindsight, needed stitches and antibiotics and everything else. But a couple of days later, when wounds start turning colors, I guess we'll keep this really clean. I ended up at a trail angel's house, and she happened to be an emergency room nurse. And she, I was like, yeah, if you don't mind, just take a look at this and let me know. I mean, is my foot going to fall off? Do I need to go into the hospital? And she went in and brought me back some antibiotics. And, and it's just one of those things. She didn't have to do that. That's probably breaking the law. And she did it anyway. She knew that I didn't want to go and sit in the ER and take the time to do those types of things. And she let me stay an extra day, sort of nursed everything back. And, it was enough to mentally know that, hey, I'm going to be okay. I got these people that are taking care of me, and I don't know them. They're strangers. And in these types of stories, they happened pretty much in every state. And in particular, we've had other trail angels that came out. And in 2016, Gatlinburg underwent a huge forest fire, wildfires that took over a lot of the Great Smoky Mountains. And so, that sort of leads to a whole nother story that, just that faith in humanity.
Yeah, it certainly does. You really put it to the test, don't you, when you do something like this, because you're so vulnerable.
Yeah, and you don't mean to. It just sort of happens. And I swear, something happens whenever you just allow those types of things just to let it go and let people in. I all I could do was compare it to when I was coaching, and, you go a mile a minute trying to make everybody around you gel and create this cohesive team, and all you want to do is compete, win, and it's that daily grind. And then you never really stop long enough to say, you know what, I'm here maybe for somebody else, or somebody else is here for me. And, what can we do for each other to keep that faith in humanity?
I understand you had to have a trail name. That was, part of the rituals of doing the trail. Is it that you get a trail name? And who decided on that? Did you name yourself?
Yeah, you know what? It is, and it's sort of fun to wait and see what kind of name you actually get. Me being such an enthusiast of the trail, I knew about trail names, and I knew that I didn't really want a stranger naming me something. I'd seen way too many bad trail names out there. And, I didn't want to get anything inappropriate, which tends to happen if you do something stupid. And I knew that my track record, I might pull something stupid and get stuck with it for the rest of my life. So some friends of mine and I, we were talking about me going out and doing this. They first thought I was a little crazy. And then we started talking about trail names, and Blonde Bear came up. It was something that back in the old days, I really wanted to brew my own beer, and I wanted to have this label that was going to be distinctive of all of the different beers that I would brew. And then since my hobbies have changed, but it sort of stuck that Blonde Bear would be my name, and then I would be able to attach that experience onto this new beer label that I was going to move forward with when I got off the trail.
Right. Are you brewing yet?
I've done it once, and I didn't finish all the bottles, and I figured maybe I should just, let the experts take care of that type of thing. I'd move on to some other hobby.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure you've been doing a lot of trail hiking since that Appalachian Trail, have you, Marci? You didn't get burnt up?
Oh, no, not at all. And it's going to be one of those things that we're coming up in the spring. I'm going to start following another couple more hikers, and I'll get that bug again. But the great thing about it is I just recently moved to Maine, and for, over 200 miles of Appalachian Trail just a couple hours away. So I'm looking forward to getting out and doing some day hikes and reliving that a little bit.
I can imagine. Well, 2,179.1 miles. Let's not forget that. 0.1 miles. North to south. Quite an achievement and something that I'm sure you'll always treasure. Now, having done it, and I know the memories will stay with you forever. So what would you say to anyone who's contemplating doing the trail?
Find a way to do whatever it is that's just eating you up inside that you really want to do or that you really want to try. It was just such a rewarding experience for me to go out and do something that I always wanted to do, that I knew so much about, but never had the time or the capacity to be able to do. And now I've got so many wonderful memories of it. I've got wonderful pictures, wonderful friends. These kids that I've met, they've turned into friends. We keep up and we keep taunting each other about when the next trail is going to happen or what is it going to be. And I think that's definitely an experience that hopefully it's not the highlight of my life, but right now it definitely was one of those moments that plenty of stories can come out of.
I'm sure, but does it set your sights even higher now? Does it make you more competitive in a way and adventurous to do other big trails?
It does. It does. And, I think about so many wonderful trail systems that we have here in the States. The PCT, and just in my backyard is the continuation of the Appalachian Trail, both internationally up into Canada. And you got the Long Trail to finish out the entire length of the state of Vermont, the Florida Trail, the Continental Divide. So there's plenty of trails here in the States that have piqued an interest, and I would love to get back out. I don't know if I'll, have the situation where I could take another 4 to 6 months to do a through hike, but I definitely know that it's important for me to take a little bit of time to do some section hiking. As a matter of fact, I would love to get back into the Smoky Mountains. I really didn't have a chance to enjoy those, that part of the trail when I did the through hike. As I alluded earlier, in 2016, there was a huge wildfire that came and broke out. And as we're hiking through, the smoke's getting so much thicker and it's freezing cold, and you think it's starting to snow, but it's really ash falling down. And when you make out into this parking lot called Newfound Gap, and there's no cars at all. And all you want to do is just get down to Gatlinburg to go refuel, go brush your teeth in a real sink, and not quite live like a homeless person on the trail. And by the time we got to Gatlinburg, it was pretty much closed down because of all the air quality. And and just like I said, tying this back, it's restoring your faith in humanity. We counted on a guy named Funk Master V, who was a taxi cab driver. He was also a ghost wrestler and a ghost hunter and an amateur wrestler. And those are the types of guys that you never think are going to help you. And they were the ones that pulled us out of a city that was about to burn down. I mean, when you look out and you're trying to do laundry at your hotel, you're the only people that are staying there. You look up the mountain, there's fire surrounding you on all 360 viewpoint. And this guy just shows up and he's like, let's get out of town. I'm headed that way. Let's get out of here. And those are the types of stories, like at the time you think, what am I doing in the situation? But hindsight, 3 years later, 4 years later, those are the stories that I absolutely live for. So yeah, I can't wait for the next trail.
Would you say that he saved your life? Would it be that dramatic?
I think that without him, things would have been a whole lot more challenging. Possibly. And, I mean, when we ended up in Gatlinburg, it was a complete ghost town. And we thought, well, the hotel's still open, so we'll just stay here. And, with the type of weather that was surrounding us, the winds that were whipping, nobody knew or how to predict or expect what was going to happen next. So it really was just sort of just this weird moment. And we really had to think on our feet. And, there were shelters in place, and they were surrounded by fire. We couldn't even get into the shelter areas. And it's a really fascinating story to go back and reread, how much was lost in that area during that time, during those wildfires. And they could have completely been prevented. I mean, they were all arson type fires, which is very sad to the environment and naturally. But yeah, I mean, I think Denny Funkmaster, I thank him still to this day for showing up in his minivan with his mirror ball in the front dash window and getting us out of town. I don't know what we would have done.
Yeah, what a wonderful story. Well, what a tremendous experience all in all, Marci. And I'm sure, as I said earlier, those memories will last you a lifetime. So I appreciate you taking the time to share them with us.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me open up my journals and share these stories, because it's so much fun to relive. It really is.
Well, good luck on the next one and future hikes, and happy trails, as they say.
Thanks so much, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Nikki Daly. I'm an international field hockey player for Ireland, and I'm also a motorsport engineer. I'm a proud WISP ambassador because I am very passionate about women in sport, particularly in hockey and motorsport. I think WISP Sports is a fantastic platform. It promotes all women in sport from any level, right the way down through to grassroots level. And I think it's really important for young girls to be able to see their role models, to see that people are out there achieving great things at different levels in sport, and it gives them something to look up to and try to achieve themselves. If you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Facebook, Nikki Daly, Instagram, Twitter, and under my Formula Female Instagram and Facebook as well for the motorsport side of what I do. Thanks for listening and helping WISP Sports turn up the volume on women in sport.
And if you hop over to our website, wispsports.com, you'll find links to Marci's social media on our show notes. Just go to the Listen tab and drop down to Transcending Sport. And whilst you're on the website, do take a look around at some of the other coverage of women's sports from around the world and across all sports. We cover everything both on and off the field of play. And if you would like to contribute to the stories, then we'd love to hear from you. You could drop us a line to info@wispsports.com, or you can leave a comment on our social media channels at Wisp Sports. We hope you will share and like us there. And if you are on iTunes at any time and feel like giving us a review, we would love that, because that does make a difference to where we are on the Apple Podcast apps and other apps. Until the next time, thank you for listening and helping us turn up the volume on women's sports.